Hello，I'm 好似有啲 echo 得 OK，我試下其他咪。Hello, okay. Hello, I'm Ximing Lam from ARC. I have been working with Ming for years, so I have witnessed how he's successfully managing many grants and research networks. Today, we're excited to share our experience of how to effectively manage grants and research team. I will start by providing some practical tips on proposal preparation, budgeting, and team communication. And then Ming will talk about how to build team rapport and devise good publication plans. Okay, so whenever we form teams for grant application, we create a Google Doc and ask each co-I, collaborator, and staff to specify their expertise, their roles, duties, and also a timeline, often in the form of Gantt charts in that Google Doc. And Ming will discuss the co-authorships on potential papers with all the collaborators early in the process. And this about the co-authorship, Ming will talk about this later. However, when many researchers are working on the proposal on that Google Doc at the same time, the document can be a bit chaotic. So it is a good idea to assign a unique color to each teammate so that they can write in their designated color in that Google Doc. And it's easy to track who contributed to which section. When you want to enhance each other's ideas, you can leave comments in that Google Doc or use suggesting mode to make edits. Don't forget to tag your collaborators in the comments where you have questions for them or you want to invite them for inputs so that they will receive notification email. When Ming and his collaborators work on the research part of the proposal, I handle the budget. My approach is to start by identifying how many staff and what types of staff are needed for the project, as this typically takes up the largest portion of grant money. I usually use a rate that is slightly higher than the minimum salary for calculating the staff cost instead of the midpoint salary. If you want to buy out a course, budget $70,000 per course. And remember to talk about it with your department in advance. Next, to consider what equipment or license you need, and remember to get quotes for these items. If your project needs to collect data, it's important to include participant incentives in your budget. If you need to host major events, budget about $200,000 per event. If you need financial support to attend conference overseas, budget $20,000 per conference per year. And lastly, include budgets for general expenses like editing, printing, or local travel costs if you need to visit schools. And remember, if you are applying for non-LGC grants, sometimes you need to include budgets like auditing fee and administrative overhead as well. Given that we always work with limited budget, so it is important to explore alternative sources for certain budget items. At ARC, we seldom include budget for student helpers. Instead, we will apply for the university-specific student empowerment work scheme. It opens applications in every year in July or August. It can support about 250 iWork hours, which we think is sufficient for many of our projects. When we invite visitors from mainland China, Macau, or Taiwan, we apply for this Tinka Ping Education Fund Visiting Scholars Exchange Program. It calls for application in September. If your budget doesn't hosting major events, you can approach the Culture Foundation. It can provide up to $250,000 per event. Last year, they called for application in December, so you can pay attention to their call. All of the above planning can help you win the grant. So what's next after you get the grant? First is to read reviewer feedback and use their feedback to revise and improve your project design, roles, and timeline. The second most important thing is celebration. You need to celebrate with your team over lunch or dinner and use this opportunity to make sure that everyone understands the project and their roles and discuss how to improve the project logistics and implementation. I remember that when Ming won the Senior Research Fellow scheme, he invited me and 2 or 3 RDO colleagues for lunch. And since that lunch, I become friends with those 2 RDO colleagues. So I can, whenever I have questions about grant application or even questions out of the expertise, I will feel comfortable approaching them and they will give me help and guide me to the right person. So it's important to share your success with your team and all staff who contributed to your success. When you get more information about the grant sub-deadlines, such as deadlines for interim completion reports or deadlines for certain output, mark these details to your Gantt chart and mark all important days in your shared calendar. To keep things more organized and make your reporting easier, I usually create a Google Sheet to document all the following key details. First is project title. If you have both English and Chinese version, put them both in the Google Sheet. The funding agency, total funding amount, project period, including the start and end dates. If you have extended the project, remember to update the Google Sheet. Your role in that project, names, affiliation, and countries of all co-Is and collaborators. A brief project overview because you can use it for promoting your project on websites. Outputs such as journal articles, seminars, or conference presentations. And remember to record the numbers and types of beneficiaries of your outputs. For example, how many students participated in your workshop or how many teachers are engaged in your intervention. These are important for your completion report and KT report. Additionally, I create another Google Sheet to record all incomes and expenses of the grant. If you're handling multiple grants with different completion days, remember to list the end dates in your Google Sheets and all allowable budgets so that you can prioritize the use of the money more effectively. Okay, next is about team communication. We do regular check-in with our team to troubleshoot problems and to ensure that the projects are on schedule. We usually check in through meetings, reports, email, and message groups. Since many of our projects engage many busy researchers, like our recent project called SMART, it has 2 chair professors, 2 deans, and a department head. So it is difficult to schedule meetings with them. So I suggest you schedule regular standing meeting time for the next 6 months. For projects with a clear division of work, monthly meetings is enough. If some teammates must coordinate more closely, they can meet more often than the others. Even you have set up the regular meeting schedule, you can always cancel the meeting if there's nothing to discuss. Just remember to inform your teammates a week in advance because we don't want to waste our time on meeting when there's nothing to discuss. At ARC, we usually meet virtually and we also party virtually because this can save our commuting time, time for setting up the venue, and make file sharing more easily. When we draft agenda for meeting, use bullet points. Keep it concise. Don't include routine updates in your agenda because we only discuss key issues, especially when there are disagreements and when we need consensus. Send out the agenda to the team before meeting and invite everyone to add items to the agenda. Remember to estimate time for each agenda item as well, because this can help you estimate how long the meeting will last and prevent it from overrun. At discussions, we let key teammates who is responsible for that issue lead the discussion. First, the teammate will specify the problem clearly and make sure that everyone understands the problem. Then use like 5 to 10 minutes to brainstorm possible solutions and write down the pros and cons for all solutions. Then do an evaluation. And finally, decide the sequence of possible solutions. If both options 3 and 4 can resolve a problem, but option 4 is definitely cheaper, we try option 4 first. That's our principle. Before wrapping up the meeting, write down the action items for each person so that they know what to do next after the meeting. And we can check progress in update reports, email, or at next meeting. When there's no meeting, how can team members update each other on the progress? Remember that we created a Google Doc at the very beginning during the grant application process. We can keep using that Google Doc and ask team members to send simple update reports. For example, analysis and schedule, no problems. And make sure that everyone can access that file for a quick update. This can foster transparency and trust within the team. The last two communication methods are message groups and email. We create WhatsApp groups for different research teams, and we text the team members directly when there are urgent issues. For example, you forgot some interview protocol during data collection, you need to consult your teammates. For issues that require attention before next meeting, we use email. If that issue cannot be resolved with a single reply, schedule a short meeting between relevant parties. And remember to copy all relevant parties in your email to make sure that everyone is on the same page. Okay, now my part is done. I'm handing it over to Ming.
Thank you, Ximing. So you can see why one reason I'm so successful is I have wonderful staff like Ximing. So we often have individual projects and collaboration projects. And so when you're working with other people, it's really important to prioritize other people first. Because often your teammates depend on you to do things. So if your part isn't done, that'll hold up everyone else. So any delay will slow down the project for everyone else involved in the project often. And so you want to solve the project problem as soon as possible. Your own time, you have more flexibility. It's really critical to build rapport among group members. The way groups work together is if you cultivate reasons or opportunities for them to be successful together and be happy together. So we always celebrate successes with lunch. We have lots of parties. Parties are really important. If you want people to like each other, work together, have parties. So one of the best things, I think the first piece of advice I give to anyone who's leading anything is have birthday parties. That way, it's nice to have parties about Christmas or New Year's, but a birthday party is about that person. And so, everyone who's there is showing that they care about that person. You have other parties, of course, like the New Year and the beer parties. Also, in the parties themselves, we often play games. So Ximing is in charge of designing and picking the games. And the games are always very hard, very competitive, and in groups. This is our way of doing professional development. We actually don't list professional development, but we do a lot of it because every party we do professional development. So these games are very hard because you work in groups. You have to learn to work together. It's often very stressful because there's time limit, and the problems are really hard. It's like if a problem is something one person can do, it's too easy for our game. It has to be something like one person is really hard, almost impossible one person to do. And because it's competitive, you're competing against another team. And the people in our groups are very smart, right? So these are like your opponent is quite good, and you learn to work together. You often take up like temporary leadership of groups because of certain situations or roles. So this is a really good way for us to do professional development without hiring outside people or taking separate time off. And then it's in the context of a party, so it's gonna be fun anyway. If you lose, it doesn't really matter. If you win, we give like little paper award, little prizes. So it's quite pleasant. Another thing is once you have a good rapport among your teammates, they don't have to come to me. So at the very beginning, when I became director, everyone's coming to me. I'm like, why are you asking me? I don't know the answers to these things. You should talk to CMA or talk to like Jan or someone else, right? So after a while, I was like, okay, you need to talk to a person who actually knows the answer. Like, I don't know the answer to most of your problems. Find who knows and just talk to that person directly. And because, they've been to lots of parties together, they kind of know each other, it's quite easy for them to ask. I think what's hard is like, if you don't know someone, you talk to your boss, right? So this is helping to know people. This way, my life is much easier. Everyone's not coming to me with problems. They're talking to each other. And also because they're helping each other, they feel good, right? Like someone comes, you help them, they like you more. And then you also feel more capable. You're able to help them. So helping is good for both sides. Sometimes they don't know who to ask. And then it makes sense to come to me. I'll tell them who to talk to. And then in the future, they know who to ask. Because our teams are usually consist of many people with very different expertise. Some people get at like budgeting, linguistics, seeming, translation, seeming, party seeming. But also our people do like artificial intelligence, statistics. So we have different expertise. So often it's the case that you cannot do everything by yourself. You have to find other people. And so there's no reason why we have parties. So once you get a grant project, you're working on it, making progress, it's really important to design a good publication plan. So in your grant proposal, you should have written a publication plan. You should have a timeline. One, it's good to know what you're doing in the future, but also it persuades your grant viewers that you know what you're doing and you have like a sense of how things are going to proceed. So in your grant proposal, you should already think about your publications. You have to have a timeline for each paper. But of course, you do projects and you have new ideas that come out after the grant. That's really good. When this happens, you should talk about authorship as soon as possible. You want to agree in advance, like who's going to do what, on specifically on a formula to decide authorship. So here's the example formula. Like 5%, if you write the grants, if you write the paper abstract, you get 5% of credit. Introduction and theory, 20%, data, 15%, you do analysis, 15%, you write the results, 20%, write discussion, 20%, a conclusion, 5%. So this is just one example. And it doesn't really matter exactly what the formula is. As long as everyone in your group agrees that's reasonable, then that's the base you can use for future discussions about authorship. Then you decide like who wants to be first author. Then it's very easy. Just count up who's written most of the paper, right? Second author, third, and so on. So you have clarity in the beginning. It's easy to have discussion, and then everyone thinks it's fair, which is probably the most important of the process. Like it doesn't really matter exactly who does what, as long as everyone thinks it's fair. Then everyone's going to move forward, you work together. If someone thinks it's unfair, they can be annoyed and not going to work so hard. The most important part of writing, I think, is revision process. So it's quite easy to do first draft, do your initial analysis. The key thing is like, how do you make things better? So revise and resubmit applies to both reviewers, like formal journal reviewers or grant reviewers, sending feedback, but also you should be sending like papers to your friends or like colleagues so that they give you informed views. In fact, you should never send a paper out to a journal unless someone else has read it first. Because if like your friend sees something, you could change it and they won't reject you. You send it to a journal, but the journal can reject you if they think there's something that's really missing. It's really important. So we have a particular process. The lead author puts all the reviewer comments in a Google Doc. And then often you have like a whole paragraph that has like 10 different criticisms. It's really important to split that apart so you can see exactly what criticisms are, right? It's very easy to miss one if you have like a whole paragraph of like several criticisms. And then for each criticism, the lead author should know who's doing what, and they should sign like a co-author for each comment. So then that person is responsible for that reviewer comment. They respond, everyone writes down how they would deal with these comments, and then everyone looks at it to make sure we haven't missed anything. And you make sure we all agree this is all reasonable to do. This often takes a lot of time. So before you start revising, agree on what you're going to do. And sometimes you might agree like, this one comment is way too hard. Like this is like a whole new study. Let's not bother revising paper. Let's just submit it somewhere else or just do a different study. And also like it's often like you're not clear what a reviewer comment is. I was just talking about this with someone. And so then you want to ask an outside expert in the field to help review comments because it's very easy to miss under comments, especially if like you get reviewers who are not in your field or they have a different theoretical assumption or different analytic assumptions. And so And also, people are not the best writers. There are lots of professors who write really badly. And on top of that, reviewing papers is not a top priority for them. They might be, they might be doing midnight before deadline. They have to sleep, writing stuff, and sometimes it's not really clear. And so, if you ask the outside person and still not clear, you can also ask the editor, like, I just comment like, what is this person talking about? Then you have the co-authors divide your manuscript according to each comment with track changes. And then this is very important. You're going to have responses to reviewer comments in one document. You're going to revise your manuscript in a separate document. After you've revised your document, it's really important to take your changes. So let's say you write a whole new paragraph, in response to reviewer comment. Then you should take that and copy and paste it in response to your comments. And so reviewers could like, okay, you changed this, and they're looking for, what you revised. And they might find the wrong thing. Like they think you revised somewhere else, but you actually revised it here. And then there's like, no, you didn't adjust my comment, but you did, just in a different place. So you don't want reviewers just spend time looking for revisions. Also, it's kind of annoying if you can't find it easily. So you want the reviewers to be happy while they're reading your papers. Have all co-authors edit final drafts, so everyone knows what's going on. And also, if they can see things that are missing. So before you do all this, be clear on your timelines. Like we talk about timelines a lot because that helps clarity, adds clarity to what you're doing. So everyone should give a sense of like, okay, I can do it next month or next week, and then you can organize your deadlines to make sure things are done on time. And also, if people are not sure if they can make it, like tell them to take more time. Like don't have people get deadlines that'll stress them out, right? Also, one more thing about deadlines. Often journals give you like 3 months, and then, but let's say you're really busy. One of your co-authors is really busy. Ask for an extension. Most journal editors will just give extensions, whatever you want. So, like, as when I was a journal editor, anyone who asked for extension, I just gave them exactly what they want. They want like a year extension, fine. 1 year extension, it's fine for me. Journal editors really don't care about the time, right? It's not really important to them. Like their job doesn't depend on it. You get published later. It's actually probably slightly easier for them. So then they have more time to do their own work. So ask for deadlines. This is true for grants, for journals, everything. Just ask for extensions. Or also ask for more than you need. So like some journal editors are actually very picky about this. And so like they won't want to give you the time that you want. I don't know why this is psychologically, but if you ask for 3 months, they only give you 2 months. I know an editor who like will never give the person much they ask for. So ask for a little bit more. Also in response to reviewer comments, sometimes it's quite complicated. So a lot of people use tables, but they're stuck to a little box. And if you add paragraphs, it's very messy. It's very difficult to add equations. It's hard to add another table inside another table. So I have a particular format I like, which is there's a review comment. I just indent my response. So you have a lot of space, a lot of flexibility. So it's very easy to follow. You can see the reviewer comments. You can see responses. And like definitely we create equations. It's really hard to read equations inside tables. A couple of our comments. It's really important to acknowledge grant funding for your publications, both for yourself and the grant agency and journal. And I organize all my publication folders. So most of you probably don't have that many co-authors. I think I have 51 projects at this point. Each project could have multiple co-authors. I have like over 118 co-authors. So I need to really organize. And so I organize all my publications by person. So like, they have like person, there might be several projects in a person. So it helps you remember who these people are. And this also helps you streamline future reporting project outputs. Thank you very much. So if you have questions, see me come up. I guess we'll take questions.
Now we welcome any questions regarding our research, proposal management and research team management, tuning and theming. We also welcome audience online to raise their question either by opening their mic or just type on the chat box. Yeah, I can
have to say. Yeah, can I ask? Thank you very much for your proposal sharing. And I have just a simple question. So, regarding to the communications, why do you use the WhatsApp instead of the other like more professional communication software like Slack, because I get used to use the Slack because I do want to separate the private life and the working life. But it seems that quite common that like the Hong Kong team quite get used to use the WhatsApp for communication of the project. So what do you think about that? I think so.
We have a WhatsApp group for ARC, but we will ask whether of them want to be invited. We only invite those who want to be invited in the group, and we seldom ask questions there. We share some news about AI and send blessings to each other, say happy birthday to the groups. But we also have WhatsApp groups for research teams. But we only text them when there's a really urgent issues, like the meeting is going on, but the person doesn't show up, and we text what happens to him or her. But we really cannot prevent others from sending messages at night, but we don't reply to those messages. We only reply during office hour. So I think it is about the practice of the groups. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think WhatsApp is just easy because everyone has it. Also, it's free. So I think like any software is fine as long as you have some channel communication, as long as everyone's comfortable with it. So I think WhatsApp is good because you create like different types of groups. You can have like folders for professional groups, folders for friends, and so even like with like a research team, there's like fun set where people are just posting fun things, and then there are more serious things for research. So part of the reason why we don't have so many like messages because people are pretty organized and we plan ahead of time. There aren't too many emergencies to come up. So I think it's really useful for emergency. Like if it's not an emergency, you can send an email. Like because if you do like something on WhatsApp or something that's real time, people will look at it, right? We don't want to interrupt people. So like we interrupt people when we think it's really important. This is why we almost never do it. Like we almost never have emergencies. So and then on email is probably fine because then you can take your time, do it, and everyone knows it's like lower priority. But basically, as long as you're all happy with your communication means, that's fine. You should have some communication that you're all happy with.
Yeah, I practiced for years. Establish some projects. I've learned some good experience that you can share or you can add it or your experience. And Professor Chu's team, they work very efficient because they have some good schedule arrangement, such like the email will be reply in the morning. Okay, that's regularly when something reply in the morning, we get it, and in the daytime you can work on a kind of feedback. So that's regularly, I think, can train the team member or our team member that you get directions or feedback in the early day and not interrupt them or give them a lot of quick response jobs, so they can have time to work concentratedly. So I think it's good having now. I work with my team and say, okay, 8:30, I will send you something that you know, and you have time to digest. And if you have problem, just give me a quick course and I know what happens. So I think it's really good. Like Timmy said, train your group, train your team, and they will have you happy. And then everybody's happy. So this is a good experience that we learn from you. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think the lack of interruption is very important. So if I'm saying so, I don't want to interrupt teammate with emails like in the middle of the day. We often have lots of things we need to do. If she's constantly checking email, that disrupts them. So like she's doing something and her email pings, then she stops, pays attention to it, and then like maybe does deals with it, and then to get back to her original, she has to like, what was I doing before? So that's why typically all my emails are sent at 8 o'clock in the morning. So she gets everything at once, she can decide what she wants to do, and I'm not gonna bother her for the rest of the day. And so it's also, there's this like there's a key principle here, which is think about other people, right? Think about what's easy for them, what's hard for them, what makes their life happier, what makes their life more annoying, and act accordingly. So pretty much the first rule of being a good leader is to understand your team, understand your people. Yes.
May I ask a question?
They can't hear you.
I'm Cecilia. I'm very familiar with Professor Chu and learned lots of things from him, especially for my paper publications. As a first time, I was really have no idea how to manage the multiple reviewers reply. How can I do that? How can I just make the every authors on same page? So also I don't know. I don't understand. Then he just show us doing the work on the Google Sheet and sharing all the information, keep on the same page with all the authors and doing the progressions. Everybody is working on the progressions and it's efficient. So I learned a lot. But I still have questions now. For your team, is anybody a specific person to manage the whole team's members' rules? Like the person knows who's everybody's progressions, the timelines, and the document how to where are they? For me, it's really bad for to find my documents, and especially for the whole team. The team's growing. The documents, different people is stored different places, and we want to find some specific things. Sometimes it's really hard. So is there anybody? Is there some specific person in your team to manage this? Okay.
Those about related to administration, all the research parts, Ming will handle himself. He handle them himself, and he is responsible for training the postdoc fellows. So I don't need to work with the postdoc fellows, though we will meet at parties. I only work with other project officers and RAs. So I am also responsible for training them. It's hard to say how to document the
So I think but you actually have a good organized system. You have folder system. And so all the documents should be in one place. So if you're using like Dropbox, you have a folder and there's subfolders inside there. If you're using like Google Docs, you have links to all the folders. So there's like a master document, let's say for a project. And then at the top, I have links to the other documents that are important. So there's always one place you go to. Like you should never be looking for stuff. Everything should be in one place. And from there, you should be able to know where to go. And so we split the work in terms of administrative and research, which makes sense because that's our expertise. And then generally, the person in charge of a project, the lead author or the PI, is either going to be in charge of all or designate someone to do it. And so typically, it depends on your people, right? If you have like someone's really good administrator like Ximing, you can just hand over all the administrative stuff to her and it's fine. And I know what she's going to do. I'm not really worried. I actually don't even think about it. I just like, there's an administrative problem, just go Ximing. I don't even need to hear exactly what gets done. It's going to get done. And then like research, that's clearly my forte. So I deal with those issues. So it depends on your staff. Think about who, it goes to my first point. You need to know your staff well. What are they really good at? What are the strengths, what are weaknesses? And then assign your work accordingly, right? So like, I don't know if you ever took any course on leadership. I think there's like 4 things you need to know about leadership. One is you have to have good relationships. Like everyone should know that you care about them. And then so the second thing, you should know what's important to them. So when you talk with them, you understand what they like to do, what they hate to do, what they're really good at, what they're really bad at. So ideally, you assign them things that they're good at and they like. But that's always possible. And then at least you don't assign them things that they're really bad at and they hate, right? So that's the third thing, which is assignment or delegation. So we have relationship, motivations or incentives, delegation of work, and the last thing is culture, which is like basically what happens when you're not there. So culture includes things like rituals and meetings, parties, things that you do regularly. So that's like that sets up the culture you want to create. So for instance, I want to have very collaborative culture and very creative culture. So parties help with the collaboration. People know each other, they like each other. We're doing fun things together. Creativity, it's part of like the games. A lot of the games are quite creative. You have to like solve problems most of the time. You have to think of new ways of doing things. So we also have things called reciprocity rings where people help each other. We have best idea prizes. So we're constantly doing things that foster creativity and collaboration. So those are 4 things you remember: relationship, motivations, delegation, and culture. And then you can be a good leader.
Question. Raise a question.
He's on mute.
Please,
Mute.
yes.
Unmute yourself. Can you unmute him from here?
I think he's ready for question previously, but maybe not for now. Not quite sure.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Actually, just now, my original question was raised, so it was very already answered. So I have another question now. So I wonder, like, do you have a well-established kind of regulation for your team?
Regulation? What do you mean by regulation?
Rules and regulations, all kinds of like a kind of paper very well adhered to. Yeah.
So we don't have rules. I mean, there's like an implicit rule of like respect each other. There's also like the authorship. So we have examples of procedures. So I guess the way to think about it is like we have lots of procedures and ways of doing things, but we don't have strict rules. Like if you don't like a procedure, you know, we can welcome talk about it and figure out how to change it. So the procedures are good because there's standard ways you're not sure what to do. This is what we do. So we have like a birthday party procedure. Birthday party procedure.
Birthday parties procedure. We organize birthday parties each month, and then we send a Google Doc to all parties and ask them for their favorite color, favorite food, and we will buy gifts, yeah, according to their favorites and send it to them. And we will change your virtual background to the color they like. Yeah. So that's our part. Yeah, birthday party. Yeah. Yeah, these are all in Google Doc. Yeah.
So that's all for fun.
Yeah, so this is an example of procedure, right? So, like someone, let's say, seeming like it's on vacation in Taiwan or something. Someone comes in, they can follow the same procedure, right? They know what to do, and if they want to change, it's fine. So that's why it's important to have procedures, but it's not so good to have lots of rules.
Sure. So it seems like most of your team members are very like stable. Is that?
I'm sorry, say that again. It's very what?
Stable.
Well, it varies. So, like Seeming has been here like how long? Yes. So I have like I have a very distributed system of teams. So some people are very stable, like Seeming's been here a long time. So I have 2 people who are really core to my work, and so Seeming's one of them. Ting Ting is another one. So they've been with me for a long time. Ting Ting has been with me for 25 years. So she's a computer science statistician. So it's very hard to find people with skills. So I really try to keep her as happy as possible. I also have other people who are working like 2 hours a month or 10 hours a week. So I have different levels of participation. So when I get a grant, I often will not hire new people. I will often ramp up the work of the current people. So you're working 2 hours, I get a grant, you might work 10 hours. And this way I can keep a lot of people part-time. So they have full-time jobs. And then it's easy to expand, also contract. One of the hardest part about running a team is that if you have a grant, it might be 2 years. You can hire someone for 2 years, but then afterwards, you're kind of struggling. By having this distributed system, we have different levels of participation. It's easy to ramp up or ramp down.
Thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you so much for all your insights.
you.
Yes, yes, please. So we have Dr. Joe first, and then.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the talk. Sorry for. Okay. My question is actually related to the management side of the management of your teams. So you have more kind of long-term stuff and versus short-term. And so in terms of managing the short-term stuff, how do you develop a sort of a system so you are establish a relationship, but also keeping track of all your work and keep a steady pace as well. I think for me, that's kind of like a struggle. I don't know how you handle that.
Thank you. So I think, again, it depends on the person. So some people like Ximing, I basically don't manage. Like I say, like, here's a task, it's due in like 6 months. And then within 6 months, it'll just come back to me. And so people like Ximing are very easy. Other people, they need more monitoring. Like, they need to have a regular schedule and they need to meet like every week. So then for those people, I meet them every single week. So, so they can talk about things, they know they're on the right track. And it also varies. Like sometimes they might start off, they feel like can do a lot of things, but then actually things, break down, they need to meet more often. So basically I kind of scaffold. If you need more help, we meet more often. If you need less consultation, we don't need to meet as much. So I think it depends on person, depends on your team. So again, you need to know your people. And so I try to adapt to that situation. So I'm not very strict about my leadership style. I'm happy to be very strict. I'm happy to be very loose, but it depends on the person. So you can, and I think initially I'll kind of watch how they're doing. So I remember Ting who's been working for 25 years. I was like, she was in my office for a couple of days and she just worked. I could see how she's doing. It's like, yeah, she's fine. She doesn't need to be here. And then, I just wouldn't see her for 6 months or something like that. Well, that's not true. I wouldn't see her for like months at a time. So I think this is also really important when you're hiring, right? So if you want to hire someone who's very independent, then you need to check for that. Right? So like, think of a question that help you differentiate these different types of people. So one question that I like that kind of gets a little bit at this is first I ask them a very standard question. Introduce yourself for 1 minute and say why you're a good fit for this job. And the second question is, imagine you're an animal. What type of animal are you? Right? So this often tells you how they think of themselves, right? Like, one, you don't have really a lot of time to think about this question. You're in an interview, you can't wait like for a minute. Even 10 seconds seems like a really long time. So you tend to answer very quickly. And they tend to answer what they really feel. And so in their answer, it really doesn't matter what animal they are. What's really important is why they feel that way. And so they'll often tell you something about how they think about things, like what they care about, what's important to them. I also ask it because it's a type of stressor, right? You suddenly have this really strange question. Now see how quickly people adapt. Can they learn? Are they flexible? It's also kind of like, kind of like a little bit of attraction. So I think the interview is like a date. Like you want them to call they want you to like them. And I also want them to like me, right? Because they might have other job offers. So that question also tells them like, I'm not like your typical boss, right? This is going to be a very interesting job. So I think a combination of those things like help you with that. And then you can also have really more specific questions. Like you can ask them, like, tell me about like a typical day for you. What did you do yesterday? Just go through the things they went through. And their answer tells you, one, how organized they are. Other things they do regularly, like if they jog regularly or something, that tells you they're more organized. And then you can also just ask them directly, would you prefer to be like on your own and working for a project for weeks at a time, or would you prefer to be like talking to your boss regularly? So usually, people are not really concerned about those sort of questions. So any concern, I can directly ask them. And if there's something like you might be more sensitive, you can have like tests for them. So we developed a lot of tests for things. So is there something specific that you're thinking about in terms of what you want your staff to do or not do?
Sometimes people move on, right? Like research assistant move on. How can you keep your assistant? No, you can't really keep. They need to move on, right? And that's a natural sequence. But at the same time, I think that's often I run into the struggle is, okay, one move on, and then I haven't trained the other one yet. And so then you have left with a huge gap. And then you kind of like, okay, what do you do?
So I have 3 levels of answer to that question. One is like, try and keep your staff. 2 is like, creative means to adapt to a situation. And 3, when people leave, how can we quickly adjust? So the parties are important to help people like being there, right? They like people around them. If another job might pay a little bit more, but they're really happy with this job, they're less likely to leave. If the job pays 3 times more, they're going to leave, right? Sometimes it's just unavoidable. No matter how much you like the place, you can pay 3 times more. It's hard to say no. A second thing is like I try to be creative about how can I keep them. So Ting Ting wants to leave. I think after like 4 or 5 years, she wanted to leave. So I was like, why do you want to leave? And she's like, I want to get a master's. I was like, oh, okay. Why don't you keep working for me full time? And you could do your master's part time. I'll pay for your master's, which isn't that much in Hong Kong, right? And so this way, it's really hard to replace someone like Ting Ting. Like, who knows computer science, statistics is really thoughtful, careful, creative. Hard to find someone like that. So, like, okay, whatever I can do to keep her, keep her working full time, I'll do it. So that investment in her master's degree was definitely worth way more than like trying to find someone else as good as she is. So try to be creative about possible solutions. Also, at the time I hired her, I actually didn't have any long-term grants. Everything was like 1 year. And you can't hire someone that good for only like a 1 year job. So we had a separate contract where I would pay her as much as possible from grant money. It was there. But if I got no grants, I'd pay her out of my own salary. So we had a long-term contract. She was a permanent employee, even though her funding could have been like 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 6 months, like that. So this is how I could have a really good staff member working full time, even though I didn't have funding. So actually in the last 25 years, there's 1 year where I had no grant money. I had to pay out my own salary. So, sometimes you do have to pay the cost. And the last thing is, let's say someone, does leave. And so I have staff, like they were offered 3 times as much money. Yes, you should go take the other job. This is why we have the procedures. We have this transparency of the Google Doc. So a new person comes in, they could just look at the Google Doc and see all things that have been done in the past. They could see the partial work. They could see the procedures. So it's much easier to get them up to speed. And then we still have to do orientation. Right? You still have to talk with them, see how things are done. That all takes time too. So there are different layers of how you address this issue.
Thank you for your sharing. So my question is for Siming. I know you have many project, many tasks. How can you manage your time and your tasks at the same time? So I have many tasks, very small tasks. It's very time consuming, but sometimes I something important, something urgent. I do this and then I forget that. Yeah. So how can you manage your times and your multiple tasks? Do you separate them at Monday? What I'm going to do Thursday, Wednesday, or what's your
task? I will prioritize them. Ming has a good practice. He will specify the deadline in the email subject. So I can easily understand when I need to complete that task. Then I will create another Google Doc and put all the tasks in there and move them move them around according to their priority. Then after I finish a task, I will cross it out. Yeah. So that's how I manage my task.
Yeah. Also, another thing is you can have lots of little tasks if your boss breaks it down and has to do like 10 different things. I actually don't do that. So like when asking me to do something, it's often a big task, like maybe like prepare a conference, right? So it's something huge. And so instead of breaking down lots of little tasks, Siming can decide what the order should be because I trust her to know how to prioritize. And this way, instead of getting like 10 deadlines for 10 tasks, she has 1 deadline for a big task, but she breaks it down herself. And so she knows her work life and she can adjust. So if you have really good staff members, that's another way it saves you time. Like I don't spend time breaking things into 10 parts and assigning deadlines for them. She can just have 1 deadline and do the organization herself and assign to other people, right? So she's not only like doing tasks, she's also managing other people, right? So she also thinks about how she can assign tasks to other people efficiently. So this is another thing, like if your staff have good leadership skills, even though they're not technically in charge of anything, they can think about how organizing is better. Especially now with like large language models like ChatGPT, essentially everyone has an assistant now, right? And so how effective that is depends on how good your instructions are. So you give good instructions, you'll get better results. You give bad instructions, you get bad results. Just like, that sense is people and AI are very similar. So I think everyone should have pretty good leadership skills now because they'll help you immensely. So I think like that's part of the answer too. It's not only about the staff, it's also about your boss.
Thank you for sharing. I would like to ask how to manage a team with some full-time staff. Actually, all the payment is from the funding, but the funding maybe last for 1 or 2 years. So your suggestion is we keep applying some small funding. It's easier to apply, but this will add more workload to the admin, or just target some big one lasts for 1 or 2 years.
So I think practically, unless you're like a really amazing grant writer, and there's a really high chance you won't get grants that you apply for. So basically, I apply for lots of grants. I'll apply for like 10 or 20 grants one year, and maybe I get like 1/4 of them, which is still, pretty good, right? And so like now that I have more money, I don't apply for small grants anymore, but when starting out, I apply for everything, like anything that might fit. And then the grants, it cannot be on the same topic. So you apply in different places that be different. But you can often make them overlap, right? You might have the same theory, but you're testing like primary school versus secondary school. The theory is not exactly the same. There's overlap. You might use similar methodologies like control experiments for all your studies. So like you should think about what things can be the same and what things you can change. So you're not writing 100% new grants each time. I think like 50% different is probably fine for any grant proposal. And then sometimes it's for promotion, like you need RGC grants to promote it. But other grants like, what are the ones like TGAPing? There are things that Ximing mentioned above. Those might help you with other things. There's also like school-based grants, which you can't count for your research, but you can use money, and you can always design projects so that it's like partially to help school, but also partially testing ideas, testing theories. So your evaluation, like if you're doing a control experiment in school, that's good for school, but it's also good for your research. You can publish off of it. So think of like how you can have different grants serve overlapping goals. And then in terms of the grants themselves, it's really an important thing about budgeting, right? You don't want to be a situation where you hire someone really great for 2 years, but then they need to leave and get another job, right? So try to apply for a lot. And this is also where center is really helpful, because we have center, I have lots of projects going on at the same time. I could like hire someone part-time for one grant, like let's say half-time for a grant and half-time for another grant. So together it's full-time, right? So there are different strategies like that you can do when you work with other people. So in fact, like there's a team of people who are working on a project and they want to hire their own RA. And like, yeah, you could do that, but you only hire an RA for like 6 months. It's hard to hire for 6 months. But if all you share one RA, you can have one RA for 2 years. You can hire a much better person in 2 years. But then you really have to agree, like have a clear schedule. Okay, they're always going to collect data, go to schools for these 3 months. They're going to like call principals for these 3 months, right? So you need to really be organized and be very clear who's doing what at what time. And this is where Google Docs is important. Everything should be written down. Like people forget, if things are written down, you can go and check. So like a lot of it's a coordination problem. You need to be really, pretty much, I remember when I was like 17 years old, I read a newspaper article about someone who had won like a Nobel Prize. And he said like he really loved being an assistant professor. He was in the laboratory all the time. He was doing experiments. But then when he became like an associate professor, he's not in labs anymore. He just spent all his time writing grants. And so he had ideas he run, but like he really missed being in lab, which he really liked, which is, I kind of have that same feeling. Like all the things I really like to do, Ting Ting does now. Like she does all my analysis, because I really like doing. So I almost don't analyze anything anymore. But it's easy to find someone to do analysis. It's hard to find someone who will write grants well. So unfortunately, I have to write the grant proposals.
Grant writing and the paper writing. So how within a week, how do you say you have 8 hours? I don't know, maybe 10 hours per day for your for work, and how many hours do you designate for writing, your research writing versus grant writing versus admin? So how do you structure your week in that sense?
So I actually have a computer program running in the background that tells me how much time I spend every single day and every single week. And I usually spend 40 to 45 hours every single week on work. So this is really important. Like people work really long hours, but our most important job is to be creative And it's really hard to be creative if you're tired. So I tell all my staff, don't work so hard. Make sure you have enough energy to be creative. And so I know not everyone in Hong Kong thinks this way, but I think it's really important if you're doing creative work. And in terms of grants versus journal articles, I actually don't have a split because I've been working in this field for a long time, like around almost 30 years. And so I've been able to do things really, really fast. So just like when you learn Cantonese or any language, at the beginning it's really hard. Like even a word can be really hard to figure out. But now that you speak for like decades, and now you can just, think it and speak it. You don't try to do anything, you just speak it, right? So that's what happened to me over time. So at the beginning, there's a statistical analysis. I'd be like, okay, which way should I do? Should I this way, that way? And it might take like a whole week just to figure out like exactly what the right analysis should be. Now you ask me a question about analysis, I can tell you within a few seconds what the analysis should be. So that also applies to my writing. Like before, it'd take me like, several minutes to write one sentence because I'm not sure how to write it. Now I could just pretty much think it and write it at the same time. In fact, I can look at other people's papers, take their bad writing and rewrite it within seconds. Like each sentence, take a second to rewrite. So part of the answer is I'm really, really fast now because so many things that used to take a long time are now automatic. So just like you speak automatically, I can think statistics automatically, I can write pretty much automatically. And so because of that, I pretty much have nothing to do like day to day. So every day, I wake up, I check my email, and then people ask me to do things. And then often I can do everything in one day. Like someone asks me to revise a paper that's like 30 pages long. I can often rewrite it, the whole thing in one day. So part of it is speed. Like if you do something over and again, you think of how to make it better, you can do things really fast. So a simple way of thinking about it is like a template. So people have asked me to add the analysis section of a grant proposal 2 hours before they have to submit it, which is really crazy. And please don't do this to me. But actually at that time, I had a template of analyses. Like, so for each type of issue in analysis, I'll have like, okay, for missing data, I use Markov chain Monte Carlo multiple imputation, right? So I actually have a table of like statistical problems and statistical solutions. So I can take this table, I look at what they're doing and just mark what the major problems are. And it's okay, like there are 5 major problems. I have 5 solutions already. I actually have this in my head, but the table makes it clear. And then when I write up, okay, it's like to address this issue, this problem, I will use this. To address this problem, use this. So that table is sort of like a template for my writing. So this way I can take a problem, figure out the minor issues, address them, and then write the whole thing within a few minutes. So that's that's like a detailed example of how I can do this quickly. So I don't break down my time in terms of grants or research. I don't even break it down in terms of which projects to. People send me stuff, and if it's just one thing, I'll just work on that. But sometimes people, 5 people send me things, and then yes, I need to prioritize the way seeming prioritized. Not in terms of grants or research, but in terms of time and deadlines. So if something's been taking a long time as a deadline, that goes first. Most things, I'm waiting for someone else. I'm not waiting for me. They're not waiting for me. So even though like I have over 50 projects, I think on 45 of them, my part's already done. I'm just waiting for other people. It's only like 5 projects one at a time. So it's not as crazy as it sounds.
Thank you, Ming, very much, and Ming for your sharing. And before we wrap up the section, I would also like to thank the colleagues from DRSBC, the co-chair Jenny, and the co-organizer Annie Hu, and also the helping admin staff Gigi for helping to organize this section. So thank you everyone for coming, and we see you